The House will please come to order. Welcome, members, to the 12th day of the 66th Wyoming Legislature's budget session. Members, let's join the Reverend Mark Marston from First United Methodist Church for our opening.
Let us pray. Our Lord in heaven, we ask on this day that you might guide our steps, that we might find the path that you have cut for us. May the journey be difficult, arduous, long and difficult, but our Lord, we know that you are with us. Help us to persevere. Our Lord, we know that we remember that we do not walk this path just for ourselves, but for those who sent us here. And we remember that you are with us each step of the way, each day, each breath, each heartbeat. And for this, we give you great thanks through Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
All right, members, we've got a lot of business to attend to today, so let's get started. Roll call.
Convening roll for the 12th day, Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn, excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Here.
Grego. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Eklund. Fortner. Greer. Sorry, I had you down there. Nicholas. Excused. Mr. Speaker, 58 present, 2 excused.
Thank you very much, members. We have a couple of privileges of the floor. Start with Chairman Greer. Chairman Greer, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
So members in the West Stands, bear with me. Special day for me. 4 of the most special, 5 special people in my life are here. My wife, Tiffany,
my wonderful daughter, Taylor, little Waylon, Western Michael. They come down here to join me, watch you guys do your work here in these waiting days of my last session. And I very much would welcome them here and have you welcome them for me, please.
Well, that is special indeed to have the family here with us. You're a blessed man, Representative Greer, Chairman Greer. You're very blessed. Any other privileges? Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and privilege of the floor. I would
Please.
like to call your attention to the South Gallery, and the woman standing up now is Pauline Brown. Pauline was married to Bert Brown for 37 years, and Bert was a firefighter in Rock Springs for 20 years. Pauline had 2 children with Bert, and while he was in the fire service, he was putting out fires, and Pauline, who is better known to all of us as Slim, took care of everything at the home front and even went so far as to go to the firehouse and cook meals for the firemen because, according to Slim, Bert was a lousy cook. What really makes Slim stand out is that when we were taking testimony over the summer upstairs in JAC, Slim came and gave the most compelling testimony imaginable about the importance of the pensions to the fire aid beneficiaries. And I would like to take this opportunity to honor Slim and welcome her to the House.
Welcome to the House, Miss Slim. So glad you're with us today. That's how we do it. Take care of our elders and take care of our young people in Wyoming. Well done. Anything else from the floor? Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 28th, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Provenza and Haroldson.
All right, members, a little bit different order of business today. We're going to do explanation of the budget. So if I get the thumbs up from the chairman, we'll do that first. If he's not quite ready, then we'll go to some Senate files on first reading. So our budget committee, if you're preparing for that, please, we'll get there. All right, so members, I'm going to turn this over to Chairman Nicholas. If there are questions or if you have questions, and you will still come through the chair, but I'm going to give some latitude to the Appropriations Committee to explain things. But if you have questions as we go through this, we'll take questions. So with that, Mr. Chairman, please proceed. Explanation of Senate File 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the presentation of basically the actions of the Senate and how they differed or were the same as the actions we took on this floor. In your box in front of you, you'll see a larger sheet. So this is what we'll be walking through. It's a two-sided sheet. The first 16 are mere budget amendments. In other words, that's what we passed and that's what they passed, and they're the same. So on the mirrored budget amendments, I'm just going to tell you what they are very quickly, but there's no action necessary because they're identical budgets and there's no action required. Then there's several ones. The next section is the section of amendments that are similar. And so we'll walk through those. And then on the back of the page are the budget bills that are that are different, just kind of unique, and the differences between the House and the Senate. So just in terms of general numbers, there were 16 identical amendments. So 16 on our side and their side were the same. We had 16 amendments that were different as well. And so really it was probably one of the least controversial, least number of differences since my 8 years on appropriations and since I've been here. It was this, as we discussed earlier, in part because the budget is the same budget, almost the same, that we passed 2 years ago. So there wasn't a lot of controversy, and the controversy basically surrounded, or the issue surrounded, a little bit of additions here, a little bit takeaway there, and a little bit of some issues on the extra ARPA dollars, but and we'll talk about that when we get to the ARPA bill and a little bit in this budget as we walk through it. So it's relatively simple and easy to present. So with that, let me give you the big numbers, and just so you have a big understanding of it. The difference in the dollar amounts between the House and the Senate was $46.6 million. We were on the higher end, they were on the lower end. But you'll understand that as soon as I talk about what they are, because there's 5 items that are really different. One is what we passed for the additional employee compensation for folks in the state of Wyoming. That was $10.8 million difference. Next, as you recall, we put $10 million in for pathways. Well, there's $10 million for pathways in a separate bill on the other sides, so they didn't feel any need to do that as part of the tourism bill. So that one's kind of an offset, but that's $20 million combined. Then they removed the ECA from education, and that's roughly $10 million. So that's $30 million difference. The next $12 million difference is the landfill, the extra dollars. Basically, we took ARPA conserved funds to shore up that landfill because it's in essence free dollars. We're not using our normal dollars to do the landfill. And the final one difference is the $6 million that we approved for a one-time 13-month bonus for those older state employees who retired 10, 15, 20 years ago, who had a lower salary, and there's no COLA, no other benefits for those particular individuals. So we brought them essentially a Christmas bonus. That's the way we've described it in the past. I think we've done this 3 times since I've been in the legislature. So all those put together, those are the differences the main differences really between the House and the Senate. So with that, if we'll go to the big sheet, I'm going to quickly walk through the identical bills just so we know what they are. And if you'll go to the far side, we'll just call it S2002. All of this was modifying the footnotes and providing for monthly reports, and you'll see the description on that far right. So I'm basically looking at that description. And in essence, it made it effective immediately and established reporting requirements slightly different than what we did. So fairly simple, direct, straightforward. The next one, with the Department of Revenue, we provided $3 million in property tax rebate for low-income individuals. Once again, we have done this in the past on occasion when we had the funds to do it. And I think it was the position of the House that we have the funds, the ARPA funds to do it. And so we did that. The Senate did not. It's just so you know, the income base is roughly, I'm trying to, the numbers, but there are 2,100 recipients roughly. And what they receive is about $400 apiece for those income-based folks that qualify for that exemption. Next has to do with the Attorney General's office. We concurred, I take it, I'm saying this wrong. They concurred with the 3 million, and they concurred with our notes on the Treasurer's office. See, I want to fight, and I don't even need to fight, so. So let's go down to number 4. They concurred with number 3, the 25 million for the suicide first responders statewide conference. Next is the Department of Health. This is the residential treatment providers for psychiatric residential treatment. What this does is we move up to match the rate rebasing. And so you'll see that number, 800,000. Well, that's matched by the federal dollar, so it's a total of 1.6 million. So they concurred with that. The next one is the DD waivers. This is also matching funds. It's $3.2 million for your comprehensive DD waiver folks, and they concurred with that. So that's a total of $4.6 million. Next is the 60,000 effective immediately. This just pays to the mortuaries for funeral costs. It's effective immediately because they had run out of funds. We appropriate dollars for this every biennium, but this is to cover the likely expenses. I think it's roughly about $500 per burial for folks that are indigent. Next, if you go to community college, that's $200,000 for rodeo. They concurred with us on that for community colleges. Next is the $7.5 million. If you recall, we added back in the step 2 cuts, we cut UW by roughly 7.2 million. This is to essentially balance that reduction that we added back to UW, so we added this back to the community colleges. Next, we've got, this is one AWAC position having to do with the, once it's funded by federal dollars, so if the federal dollars come through, forestry gets one more AWAC position. Next was their good majority floor leaders request for $400,000 for funding for the Good Neighbor Authority for negotiating forest plans. They agreed with that. Next is once again a Summers amendment. It just is a better description of how this matching endowment accounts for the ag folks will be expended and directed. And they agreed with us on that. Next is a simple amendment that redirects roughly $600,000 from the Wyoming Education Trust Fund, which was used for IT projects and special projects, and directed it to the School Foundation Program account. The idea being that because we're short on that side, it's probably money better spent to take care of our primary obligations as opposed to those exceptional budget requests. Next, they agreed to the $464,000 for the Lincoln County Alternative High School. That's for that demolition cost that came in over budget. Next is the return of $1 million from the Coyote Ridge Elementary School here in Cheyenne, just based upon the submission bids and the way that it's developed. We're returning $1 million back from that appropriation. So no arguments on that. Permanent fund disposition and accounting. So you recall this particular amendment is only effective if we pass the 2 constitutional amendments on going to the one fund concept and to increase the returns from our common schools account and from the permanent mental trust fund. And it's a temporary fix because there's about a 4-month gap between if we adopt it and when it's approved by the voters and when we finalize the legislative work that we'll do in this interim. And the last one is the $75 million. You may recall that this is funds that we're setting aside to be matching dollars for the infrastructure bill. We know that if we're going to fully match all of the infrastructure projects from that infrastructure bill, it's going to take about, I think the number is $340 million to do it. This is the first step. But in doing so, we get back I think it's 1.4 billion, right around that number, in federal funds. And so those are what we agreed on. So I turn over the next explanation to the good representative from Fremont County.
Thank you, members. So as you'll recall, thank you, Mr. Chairman, as you'll recall, when they're identical, they're really not in play when we go to Budget Conference Committee. And so these first 16, they're basically would be considered adopted because they're identical between both bodies. So with that, Mr. Vice Chair, you're going on to the next section. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to good speaker's point, the reason we'll go to conference committee is to iron out the differences that are closely related and those that are unrelated. And as the good speaker pointed out, those first 16 that the chairman talked about thus far will not be up for discussion. They're adopted by both parties. So those that are closely related that we're going to have to find a little common ground to, we had 2/3 reading amendments in one in each house where we talked about providing the Department of Environmental Quality $150,000 to do a study to be an agreement state for nuclear regulatory processes for rare earth minerals, and it really talked about the handling of thorium. The thing that made this difference is there was another 3rd reading amendment where they talked about, instead of being that you have $150,000, it's up to $150,000, so they don't have to spend it all. And so we'll get that figured out pretty quick, I'm sure. Then the next one on your list is related to the juvenile service boards. You recall that in our body, we come back and appropriated $3 million for the biennium to put the juvenile service boards back in place under the Department of Family Services. On the Senate side, they put in $1.2 million, and both of them had a contingent there, an effective immediate of about $250,000 to make sure that those boards that are currently running programs have enough to get through the biennium. Will resolve that difference. And then there was 2 3rd reading amendments, one on each side, that then required a collection and provision of demographic details on the benefit of the programs that the juvenile service boards implement, so that the department can further develop that program statewide. In the Senate 3rd reading amendment 3010 and our 2nd reading amendment 52, there was some restrictions placed upon the University of Wyoming and the Business Council for the Shop Wyoming compliance. And the difference was in the Senate side, that was just related to the university. So we'll have to resolve that. Then the last one is some technical corrections that need to be made on our side on some Section 300 and 400 things, some language in there that needs to be complied with. So that's really, those are all very closely related and shouldn't take much effort in conference committee to get done. So I'd answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, members. Any questions on these related, not identical, not unrelated amendments? Any questions? Any questions? Seeing none. Representative Stith, continue on.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So members, we're down on the bottom of the first page of the large handout, starting with unrelated amendments by the other body. You'll notice these first 2 both deal with the natural resource policy account, and they have no money associated with them. What the First Amendment does is says that of the money allocated to the governor's office to the federal natural resource policy account, and recall in the budget bill, we've got $3.5 million going to this in the budget, of which 2 million is general fund. This footnote, the addition here would say that some of this money, this account can be used to help a county or counties pay for their civil litigation with certain of the Native American tribes in connection with the meaning of certain treaties, and I believe that involves a hunting rights issue, I believe. This next amendment, the very bottom one here on this first page of the large handout, it amends footnote number 5 for the Black Hills National Forest Plan revision to make the appropriation effective immediately. Footnote number 5, of the $3.5 million that we're putting into the Federal Natural Resource Policy account, footnote 5 puts $1 million of it toward supporting the Black Hills Forest Plan revision. And this amendment just says that it's effective immediately. That's all it does. Moving on to the top of the back of the page here. Again, we have another amendment that it's the very top one, third reading amendment number 1/A on that from the other body. This amendment, although it deals with several agencies, the theme of this amendment is that it deletes essentially deletes all of the requirements in the budget that agencies provide reports. So for most of these, it's no harm, no foul, because we have a separate reports bill that does the same thing. And the one exception to that is, I believe, the removing the footnotes 2, 3, and 4 in the office that deals with our treasury. There were certain reports. So, for example, the current budget bill as drafted, as approved by this body, provides that the not later than 90 days after the end of each calendar quarter, the State Treasurer's Office shall provide a reconciliation of cash and investment earnings for all transactions conducted in the prior quarter to the Joint Appropriations Committee and Select Committee on Capital Financing and Investments. So on our version of it has that reporting requirement, and the Senate has deleted that reporting requirement. And so that's
Any questions on those?
First three, I'm done with mine.
Any questions on those? Seeing none. Representative Kinner, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing with the unrelated amendments. And so now I'm referring first to Senate 3002, a case amendment in the State Treasurer's Office. And what they did was they increased the amount of $1,681,000 in special revenue from that area, and they added 3 FTEs, and added 2 footnotes to indicate that $681,000 of that special revenue is for salaries and benefits for 3 FTEs, and $1 million is to be used for contracted accounting consultation. If you will recall, they're behind on some reports, and it's hopeful that this will help them catch up, but that's what that accounting consultation is for. Then continuing on to Senate 2001, a Perkins Amendment. The first part of that, it was a combined amendment. The first part of that deals with the military department in Veterans Services, and what they did was they decreased $267,000 of general fund related to the Veterans Museum and budget exception. And of course, our concern might be now, is there enough money to continue on with the Veterans Museum? And we'll be talking about that further down the road. The second part of that, this section 314 and 315, if you want to refer to your summary sheet, it can be found on page 61. And the first part of that in the section 300s, the Mineral Severance Tax Division, what they did was basically delete section 314, so I'm not going to go into the description of that, but they deleted the secondary cap on severance tax distributions during the biennium. And then the second part of that, or the third part in Agency 315, section 300, deals with the federal mineral royalties diversions. And as you can see, it deletes a portion of section 315. So also on page 61 of the summary sheet, it deletes the last part of that, the secondary cap on federal mineral royalties for the biennium. And then the next amendment, Senate 3005, a Hicks Amendment in the State Construction Department, added a footnote, and this one is kind of an interesting, and it's a little bit interesting to see this, but to make it better understandable, it was part of a larger amendment that was divided, and the first part failed. So this footnote really doesn't make a lot of sense, but it adds a footnote number 3 to indicate that in the event of insufficient funds for K-12 major maintenance, consistent with current statute, payments shall be reduced by a uniform percentage, which is what we would do and which matches current law. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, no harm, no foul. And I will turn it over to Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any questions on any of those? Any questions on any of those? Chairman Greer, question on, please refer to the amendment number, if you would, the Senate amendment number as you inquire, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sorry to burn floor time, but I am curious about the section 314 and section 315. I think it'd be good to walk us through what that does exactly,
All right.
that amendment. So that's the Perkins Amendment, Senate, what is it, 2001 1.02.
So it's Division 2 of the second reading amendment number 1, and I'll ask the members to refrain from using the sponsors' names on the floor. Just we have another ways to do that, but anyway. So it'll be that third box line down and the 2 bottom lines. It's page 29 and 30 of the bill. Please proceed, Representative Kinner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. Really, it's the secondary cap. And what that secondary cap would have done is it would have sent half of the amount above that to the budget reserve account, and it would have sent another half of that amount to the school foundation program reserve account. And that would have been above that secondary cap. Okay, then the next one, the 315, what that would have done with federal mineral royalties above the $485 million limit, that would have sent those funds to half. Half of it would have gone to the school foundation program account, and half would have gone to the budget reserve account. That does not happen now, and it will stay with the prior division of those funds.
Okay, further questions? Further questions? Seeing none. Representative Schwartz, I think you're taking the next sections.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So starting down the middle of that page, third reading amendment number 23, and I find this to be the most intriguing of the amendments. It's a little different because what it does, it says that the Department of Health and the governor should negotiate with CMS to lower our FMAP, which is, for those of you who haven't been on labor health, this is the percentage of federal money we get to match. So our FMAP is currently 50%, which is lower than all of the adjacent states. The reason for that is that there's one county in the state that apparently has a very high median income, and it skews our state median income and puts us at a lower level. So what this amendment does is authorize a negotiation to see if there is a mechanism to find another way of computing the FMAP so that we are not at a disadvantage compared to our adjacent states. Moving on to the one below it, which is second reading amendment number 13. And what this one does, we've discussed there's a program called Wyoming Home Services that provides care for seniors in their homes. The goal of it is to keep them out of nursing homes. And this is just reaffirming the intent of the body that it's only funded for 1 year. The intent was that the department come back to us in their supplemental budget to fund it again in the second year of the biennium, based on the fact that they are supposed to provide us information on the efficacy of the program, where it's being implemented, and whether or not it's possible to get a Medicaid waiver to help subsidize it. The next one is third reading amendment number 9. This is one that this body determined to be not germane, so we did not consider it. It was passed by the other body, and I will say no more on that. And those are the ones I have, Mr. Speaker. Welcome any questions.
Any questions? Any questions? Thank you. Representative Simpson, take the next sections, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, we're on Senate's second reading amendment number 37. It affects the Supreme Court. This modified a footnote to remove reference to district court judges. The budget bill calls for a weighted workload study, basically timesheets evaluation to determine how busy the judges are and if they're overworked. Both the circuit judges and the district court judges were to be included in this evaluation. However, this amendment removes the district court judges and leaves only the circuit judges to be evaluated on their timesheets. Second reading amendment number 24 affects education, school finance. Folks, you remember the Joint Education Committee recommended 2 ECAs. The largest one, as I recall, of $26 million was to increase the salaries of all school teachers in the state. The second ECA affected energy and educational materials. The Joint Appropriations Committee rejected the first ECA, so there was no ECA for salaries of employees of school districts. However, the Joint Appropriations Committee did recommend a $9.3 million ECA for energy, in other words, utilities and education materials. This particular amendment that was concurred on by the Senate removes that $9.3 million. So there would be no ECAs extended to our school districts at all this year if this holds. Now looking at Senate second reading amendment number 25 affecting the Department of Education. The sponsor of this amendment was concerned that there would be a decrease in funding support for the applied agriculture and farming programs as part of the CTE program. And so this amendment suggests to the Department of Education that whatever level of effort you spent in the last biennium, you needed to continue to hold that level of effort into the next biennium. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. We have Representative Walt. Any questions on any of those sections? Questions? Representative Walters, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To wrap up the unrelated items, we'll start with second reading amendment number 1, Division 4. That's why it's .04. And this is a Section 300 budget balancer. And so if you remember in the budget, there was $75 million into the PMTF corpus, $75 million into the Common School Land Fund corpus. And what this change is, it takes the $75 million from the Common School Land Fund, puts it into the PMTF. So that would make for a total of $150 million into the PMTF corpus and no funding going into the Common School Land Fund permanent corpus. Senate third reading number 13 is the next one. This is a $100 million general fund transfer to SIPA. And then it further defines that at the end of the biennium, any unappropriated funds in SIPA from this particular appropriation would then sweep to the LSRA. And the purpose for this was to try and cover anything that might be coming in bills that are coming through the process this session. And the Senate recognized on their end of the hall that there are some bills that had some SIPA expenditures in them, and they just wanted to make sure that there was adequate funding to cover those expenses, because as of now, the SIPA account is fully expended. So moving on to third reading number 22, Division number 1. This is carryover appropriations, and this is a carryover and a reappropriation of $4 million of what was SIPA from our 2021 session. And this is matching funds for the university for the purpose of creating a smart contract and research development center. We had a similar amendment here on this side that did not make it to the finish line. The difference in this one and the one that we had on our side is this one was for 4 million of carryover funds that came from last session, and the one on our side had that 4 million of carryover funds plus an additional 6 million for a total 10 million appropriation. Again, this is just 4 million carryover and some updated language. So any questions on the last three differences? And that will wrap up our presentation.
Thank you. Members, anything on anything? Anything on anything? That's a good one. We'll go to the chairman, finish this out.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you go on the back page, down at the bottom, you see the total number of amendments. So total number of amendments, $91 million. On the sheet on the is down on the other side, that number is 122 million. That's the difference between our sheet and their sheet as they're going through our amendments. So, because that's where we were at. We were at 122 million. What I want to let the body remember at the end of the day, if you look at that 122 million that we passed out of here in an exception request of this budget, over 100 million of those dollars are ARPA conserved funds. In other words, we took those funds and then substituted them for our general fund dollars so that it saves us that much money and put that much more money eventually into either the legislative reserve account or some other programs that we want to fund, which means that our exception requests are basically $20 million for the biennium. And that's so just numbers I think you need to keep in the back of your head as we go forward. And when you vote on the budget, on the bill in general, because a significant amount of it is being paid for by those ARPA dollars that we have to expend, and we have no choice. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Any questions? Seeing none. Members, I didn't follow the script exactly on course, so reading clerk, would you read the committee report?
Senate File 1, sponsored by Appropriations. General Government Appropriations, an act to make appropriations for the fiscal biennium commencing July 1st, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2024. Your Committee Number 2 on Appropriations has reviewed Senate File 1 pursuant to Joint Rule 14-1E, 1 and 2. The following lists are provided. Being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. So members, as the rule, the reading clerk read in, the Rule 14 of our joint rules is how we handle the mirror bill, our budget bill. The explanation you received was in advance of the report, but they go together. Any further business on this matter? Any further business? Seeing none, members, I'm going to, there's obviously, we go directly to a conference committee. Representative Gray, did you have something on this?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I still ask a question really quickly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to ask the Appropriations Committee on the third reading amendment that reduces the CSPLF transfer to zero. Why would they do that? I mean, that's the main deficit that our state has. Why would you know, everyone talks about reducing deficits through earnings. I mean, why, to me, of all the transfers into these endowments, that's the one that actually addressed one of our big deficits by producing investment earnings to go towards that deficit. So I just wanted to see if the committee has any thoughts on that. And I find that kind of troubling. Thank you.
Thank you. Trying to understand what our colleagues are doing. Good question, Representative Gray. That's why we go to conference committee. But Representative Walters, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I cannot speak for what our friends down at the other end of the hall were thinking on this, I can tell you in our budget discussions, the PMTF and the common schools are invested in a different fashion. And so there's a belief that the PMTF generates more income because of the way it is invested. However, if you look at the historic returns, the common school has actually generated a higher percentage rate of return. And so that, like I said, I can't tell you what they were thinking in this particular amendment. I can tell you in our weeks of budget discussions, that was something that they would bring up on a regular basis, that due to the way the allowable investment policy, the PMTF is a little bit more aggressive, thus it should return a higher percentage rate of return. However, we have not seen that historically just due to the way the policies on each have been implemented. And so we're all scratching our heads at the same time, wondering what they were up to.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, Senate File 1 is referred directly to a conference committee consisting of 5 members to meet and resolve differences between the houses with respect to the budget bills, House Bill 1 and Senate File 1. Now recall, member, the first committee is not a free committee. They work within the differences. And then from there on, and we hope they resolve it. So I'm going to assign the conference committee. It'll be Larson, Nicholas, Schwartz, Stith, Walters, Nicholas, Chair. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a privilege you'd like to bring forward?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, in the South Gallery, I would like to introduce Gene Dietrich. Gene was born in 1941 and grew up in Selby, South Dakota. Gene joined the Newcastle Fire Department in December 1961. Gene has held various positions in the leadership of the department, including serving 6 years as chief. Gene is a 60-year member of the Wyoming State Firemen's Association. I'm going to repeat that. 60-year member. He has served in the leadership, including president. Gene helped the leadership get the Volunteer Fire Pension Board up and functioning in 1967 and was appointed to the board in 87. He still serves on the board. Gene became a member of the Wyoming Fire Chiefs Association a short time after it was started in 1981. He has served in the leadership, including president. Gene assisted in the founding of the Wyoming Fire Academy Foundation in 1985. Gene was honored in 2020 to be selected to the inaugural Wyoming Firefighters Hall of Fame. Gene was just honored this past Wednesday, February 23rd, by Governor Mark Gordon at a ceremony proclaiming March 8th, 2022 as Fireman Gene Dietrich Day. He feels further honored by today's recognition by the members of the state of Wyoming's legislature. And Gene, thank you so much. And my good ex-firefighter, or maybe current firefighter, Representative Burkhart would like to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a few words about Gene. Over the years, Gene has become a friend. He served as chairman of the retirement board for the Volunteer Fire Retirement Program, which is a separate board linked to the WRS. And in that capacity, Gene built and helped build probably one of the best retirement systems we have in the state. If you go and look at the various retirement programs, it's the most modern, it's the best funded, it'll reach 100% funded faster than anyone else, all to Gene's efforts. And it took a lot of work. And over the years, I've come to know Gene. I'd call him a friend. And ladies and gentlemen, you realize a third of statehood, he's been in the fire service. He served the people of this state and his community for roughly a third of statehood. So with that, if you'd help me in congratulating Gene, welcome.
Well, welcome, sir, and welcome to all the firefighters. All the firefighters are here. Please remain standing and let us thank you for your service. So we do congratulate all of you and thank you for your service to our communities, to our families. We appreciate you. And I don't know that ex-appropriator that was just talking about a third of statehood. I think that's approaching half of statehood, 60 years. This is a 66th Wyoming legislature, and 60 years is 6 years away from being halfway. So, wow, that's quite an accomplishment. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Further business from the floor? Further business from the floor? We have Senate files on first reading. First Senate file, 77.
Senate File 77, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
First reading of the bill.
Name change, duration of residency requirement.
Senate File 77, referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Senate Files 100.
Senate File 100, sponsored by Senator Landon.
First reading of the bill.
Stalking amendments.
Senate File 100 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next, Senate File 80.
Senate File 80, sponsored by Water.
First reading of the bill.
Omnibus Water Bill Construction.
Senate File 80 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 82.
Senate File 82, sponsored by Water.
First reading of the bill.
Supplemental Water Development Funding.
Senate File 82 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Next, Senate File 90.
Senate File 90, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
First reading of the bill.
Capital Financing Select Committee membership.
Senate File 90 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Next, Senate File 106.
Senate File 106, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
First reading of the bill.
Wyoming Stable Token Act.
Senate File 106 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Next, Senate File 43.
Senate File 43, sponsored by Senator Wasserberger.
First reading of the bill.
Community College District Elections.
Senate File 43 is referred to Committee Number 3, Education. Next, Senate File 78. Revenue. My apologies. Revenue Committee.
Senate File 78, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
Chief Clerk, I wrote both of those wrong. So we're going to actually send Senate File 43 to Committee Number 4. My apologies. So Senate File 43 will be referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Next one is Senate File 78.
Senate File 78, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
First reading of the bill.
Language Proficiency, Seal of Biliteracy.
Senate File 78 will also be referred to Committee Number 4. My apologies, Chief Clerk. Next, Senate File 81.
Senate File 81, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
First reading of the bill.
Clarification of existing state ownership of groundwater.
Senate File 81 is referred to Committee Number 5, Ag. Senate File 11.
Senate File 11, sponsored by Senator Anderson.
First reading of the bill.
Display of state flag.
Senate File 11 is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Next, Senate File 86.
Senate File 86, sponsored by Senator Boner.
First reading of the bill.
Wildfires, one call exemption.
Senate File 86 referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Next, Senate File 36.
Senate File 36, sponsored by Labor.
First reading of the bill.
Pharmacy Benefit Managers Act enhancements.
Senate File 36 referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next, Senate File 55.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Blockchain.
First reading of the bill.
Insurance Sandbox.
Senate File 55 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next, Senate File 41.
Senate File 41, sponsored by Senator Cost.
First reading of the bill.
Expanding Next Generation 911.
Senate File 41 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next, Senate File 92.
Senate File 92, sponsored by Senator Landon.
First reading of the bill.
Driver's license renewal or extension exception.
Senate File 92 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next, Senate File 84.
Senate File 84, sponsored by Federal Natural Resource Management.
First reading of the bill.
Mineral royalties, proportional severance tax relief.
Senate File 84 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next, Senate File 76.
Senate File 76, sponsored by Senator Case.
First reading of the bill.
Financial exploitation of vulnerable adults.
Senate File 76 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Next, Senate File 85.
Senate File 85, sponsored by Senator Perkins.
First reading of the bill.
Child Care Facility Certification Exemption.
Senate File 85 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Reports from standing committees.
Senate File 19, sponsored by Revenue, County Optional Property Tax Refund Program, an act relating to taxation and revenue. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3 Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 19, County Optional Property Tax Refund Program, respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Baker, Gray, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Jennings, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Representative Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate File 34, sponsored by Revenue. Inheritance Tax Fees Repeal, an act relating to taxation and revenue. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3 Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 34, Inheritance Tax Fees Repeal, respectful report, same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Baker, Gray, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Jennings, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate File 38, sponsored by Revenue. Monthly ad valorem tax revisions, an act relating to ad valorem taxation of mineral production. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3 Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 38 engrossed, monthly ad valorem tax revisions, respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Baker, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Jennings, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Noes. Representative Gray. Representative Harshman, Chairman.
We have a re-referral. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would re-refer Senate File 38 to committee number, that's 2, isn't it? Appropriations? Okay, thank you.
Without objection, Senate File 30 is re-referred to committee number 2. Any further business from the floor? Further business from the floor. All right, members, we're on that order of bills on second reading. First bill for our consideration is Senate File 2.
Senate File 2, sponsored by Management Council, Legislative Budget, an act relating to appropriations for the legislature.
We have amendments. I see the first one, number 1, is Representative Larson. Dan, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I bring second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File number 2 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is a amendment I brought for many years. I think those that have been here a while will remember it. It's going to allow us to have a voting system that you can vote from your desk. And also it will display bill information and roll call votes on monitors on our walls. And that's the amendment. I ask for an aye vote.
All right, members, we're on second reading. Second reading rules apply. Any member first time? First time, Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I didn't quite hear it, but I thought it was an electronic voting system. And Mr. Speaker, I oppose, I stand on and against the amendment. I like our traditions. I like the way we ring out our vote when it happens. And I don't think anything good comes from an electronic voting system.
Thank you. Other members, first time on the amendment. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, on and against the amendment. So I've had the opportunity to watch several other state legislators in action, and particularly the ones that have electronic voting. And I can just tell you that it's an entirely different atmosphere. And one of the fun things is working a bill, because the votes are coming up, and you can run up and down here, and you can talk to people while the vote's going on, and you keep a number tally, and you just can't beat it. What we have here. Unfortunately, we're a small enough state. We have a few enough bills, but we can all do this, and we can hear everybody's voice, and we can talk to people and read what's going on the floor, and our tradition is just invaluable. So on and against.
Thank you. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, I really appreciate the concept of having video monitors in the chambers. I think it provides a great opportunity for those that are hearing impaired, since we don't have anybody that signs through these proceedings. On and for.
Thank you. Chairman Flitner, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you could just speak to the cost, I'm curious what that would cost to implement that type of a system.
Thank you. Chairman Harshman, then Vice Chair Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, on and against, and I think there's been a few comments about the tradition and there's a certain, it's kind of hard to describe, but I think we all know it, and particularly when you're working on really difficult issues. And it's hard when you're number one to vote. And then as a speaker, when you're watching it, and then we know when we're coming up and you sit and you settle in your seat. And then you got to actually say it. Aye or no. Some of you are in a little different tone than others. It's just all so unique. And I think this is part of that. You talk to old-time members of Congress before C-SPAN and how that's changed all that. And I'll just say, I just think there's too much of this. There's too much of this already. If we're going to bring an amendment, we should probably get rid of all that stuff on third reading so we can really settle in our seats and cast our vote. And then it's instantly put on the internet so people can see it. And I just think, boy, this would be a step in the wrong direction. To have monitors, and you can see those little marks in the wall. Yeah, that was kind of the original thought. Yeah, we have monitors in here and all this stuff. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? And we should bring more of that artwork that's out there in here. And it's about all this. It's about how the sun goes over the top of that skylight during the day. And you call out an aye or a no, not this little push something on a screen. So on and against. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Larson, first time.
So I think in fairness to the conversation.
Go ahead and acknowledge the chair, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize and thank you for the reminder. Folks, in fairness to the conversation, I really do appreciate the dedication and tenacity of the bringer of this amendment. We talked about this when we was redoing the Capitol and whether we should do that. And he's right that we've resisted this. As I have visited with colleagues from other states, I must confess there's some that like that, but I certainly find those that don't as well. We were in the land of enchantment looking at their Capitol, and they have all those monitors up there, and some folks in the state to the north of us, I was looking at theirs, they do the same thing. As I visited with their newer legislators, they didn't know any different, but the ones who had been around in the days that the good former speaker and others talked about really thought that it had changed the decorum in the body, and it just had taken out kind of a piece had been lost. And I know that there's some that may not like us talking about this emotional issue quite as much, but I hope that we'll kind of stick with the tradition that and it may not always be the most efficient, it may not always be the most technologically advanced, but it is who we are. I hope you'll resist this amendment again. I don't think this will be the last time we hear it, but I hope that we'll reject it again, and let's continue on the way we are.
Thank you. Representative Duncan, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I tried to divide it, but I couldn't. But what I was wondering if maybe on another reading we could do maybe a modified version of this. Could we not have the electronic voting, but could we have the results, displayed? So something along those lines, maybe a happy medium.
Thank you. Chairman Zwaniter, then Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so I'm perfectly fine with the amendment. I think everybody is presupposing what's going to happen. But that's not what the amendment says, right? Really, all the amendment says is we're going to have video monitors in the House and Senate chambers. We actually already have the plugins. You can look at the wall. We have a TV up there now. I don't know if it changes anything, right? We can still vote audibly from our desks in a roll call, which always benefits me because I always know the vote is a Z. And there is something to be said, right? When the first 2 or 3 people, as I've been here 9 terms, when you get a couple of people who vote one way, the first 3 votes, it drastically changes how the entire roll call goes. And it's kind of fun to watch every term. But really all this says is we need $300,000 to put video monitors in the House and the Senate chambers. We have places for them. We have connectivity. I think it was really good. I was worried the first 2 weeks of this session. I think we forget in here in this body that we are live streamed all day long. And I think when you're back here and you can see that screen up there, you're a little more cautious about what you say, how quickly you talk, hand gestures. But I don't think the amendment presupposes that we have little machines at our desk, that it has our names on screens up front like other states do. We have more and more people watching us. Actually, every day as I've looked through that number of people who watch the House and the Senate chambers remotely. And so having something that would be in the bottom of their screen that would, display on the monitor, both for us and for people watching at home, because we don't do the roll call on microphones, right? So people watching at home wanting to know the vote, they get the vote count, they got to wait 5-10 minutes to be able to look online to see who voted which way. So I'm not reading into it what everybody else is reading into it. All I read into it is we have monitors in the House and Senate chambers, which we had in special session, which we had last year. I'm getting kind of used to them at this point. So I just wanted to add that in the conversation. Don't presuppose that this changes how we're going to vote and that we're going to become a big state. This really is for transparency, to make sure the public at home that are watching us all day, instead of coming up in the gallery, kind of have the same information and can follow along in real time what we're doing.
Thank you. Representative Stivar, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against this amendment, I think we need to stick with the traditions. It's worked so far real good, so on and against the amendment.
Thank you. Other members, first time. Other members, first time. We're first time on the amendment. First time on the amendment. Representative O'Hearn, first time. Any other members would like to speak to the amendment? Let's get to a microphone. Representative O'Hearn, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment. In all the many years I've been here, this is the best way to go. Thank you. On and against.
Any other members? First time. First time. First time. Second time. Second time. Second time to the sponsor. Representative Larson, Dan.
Mr. Speaker, great discussion. I think the biggest point that representative from the city made, and I'd like to repeat, is the monitors on the wall would benefit those in the gallery and probably those across the state on, they'd be able to see what bill are we talking about, the wording's up there, and also our votes would be up there. I really think our votes need to be up there. People should be able to see them. And transparency. You can go to the web and look, but if you don't know how to run through the web page, it can be somewhat difficult. So I'd hope for your aye vote.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on second reading, Amendment Number 1, Senate File 2. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. Next amendment is second reading number 2. Representative Larson, Dan.
Mr. Speaker, I bring second reading Amendment Number 2 to Senate File Number 2. This one's rather simple also. Leaves our per diem for us at $109. That's not raised, but it does knock the per diem down for those that live within 50 miles of the capital. They would receive $40. That is, I think that's fair. Those that live close to the capital do not have to get a hotel room. So why do they benefit from those dollars? So that's the big issue. If there's inclement weather or such, they and need a hotel, if they live close, they can get the $109 with it's in the amendment, so they can still do that. But I'd ask for your aye vote on this one also.
Thank you. Members, first time on the amendment. First time on the amendment. Representative Newsome, first time on the amendment.
I'm going to speak on and against this amendment. I live 20 miles from Cody, and I drive that 3 or 4 times a week. 50 miles is a whole different animal. Driving 50 miles one way and 50 miles home, that's a long ways to drive with deer, with inclement weather. If this said 20 miles, I might be on board, but at 50 miles, that's just a long ways to drive every morning and every night. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, first time? Representative Brown, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very similar discussion we've echoed in this chamber all 6 years that I've been in. We can continue to have this same discussion over and over, and I believe the words earlier were the tenacity of the bringer. There is certainly some validity to some of the argument that he's bringing forward here, but one of the things that I think is crucial for the rest of the body to understand from a legislative video, we're also taxed per diem. The rest of you are not. And so that's a portion of the paycheck that comes out. That becomes an actual tax paid into the federal government. They see it as income. They don't see it as a per diem payment to us. And so how that affects us, just kind of give you an understanding here, at the very beginning of the month, we had a management audit committee, and then we had a transportation committee meeting that were both held here. And I had to take the day off of work for both those meetings. And so when I took the day off of work, as I came back, I thought, oh, that's right, we're going to get paid for those 2 days. I'll have that check coming in by the end of next week when they go ahead and they run that process through. So I contacted LSO and I said, hey, I haven't received anything. It's been 2 weeks. And she goes, oh, no, you don't get paid for that until the end of the month. That has to run through because you get taxed on everything when you have a meeting here. So that meeting that I took 2 days off of and didn't get paid 2 days for my job, I then had to wait an entire month to get paid on that and then get taxed on that at the end of this month. Now, you guys, when you go to a meeting, and just like when we travel around this state, we do have to go get that hotel room. We have to go to Saratoga was my favorite. You get $109 per diem and the hotel room's $149. That's tough. That's a tough one. So I get it. But to arbitrarily draw a circular area here, a circumference around the city, and put 50 miles on that, I have to agree with the good representative out of the northern part of the state that 50 miles, 100 miles round trip every day, that's a heck of a jaunt. I'm lucky that I get to call this city my home, but I also don't think it's the right idea to sit there and put punitive measures on somebody to sit there and remove the availability from them to serve, because just because we're here doesn't mean we're not giving up other opportunities elsewhere. So this is a pay cut to those that are serving in this body that sit in the city of Cheyenne that are willing to make the sacrifice of the little amount of pay that we all get to do this job. We're willing to do that, and you're going to dwindle down that availability to the people who can't afford to do it anymore. So on and against.
Thank you. Any other member, first time? First time on the amendment, first time on the amendment. Say, Representative Gray, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked for an aye vote on this amendment. First of all, we've debated this a number of times in the 6 years I've been here, but it certainly wasn't every year. I think this is probably our third time, maybe fourth, debating it. And one time it was vetoed by the governor. An entire bill that had a per diem increase was vetoed when this passed. Regarding the 50 miles, in the past it's been 35 miles. And when people bring it as 35 miles, there's a legislator that lives just outside that who's actually been for this. And then people say, well, it's not fair because there's a legislator that's just outside it and it's being built around his situation. So I think some of we need to make up our minds. I mean, we have to decide the mileage one way or another. I'm fine dropping it to 35, but then, the argument that we're building it around one legislator who supported this, I'd ask people to, you can't have it both ways. You I think 35 is fine. We've got one more reading to discuss that. And I guess the reality is it just doesn't, it's not equitable to provide per diem to those that are staying in their homes in Cheyenne. It just isn't. And, you know, I appreciate the work of my colleagues in Cheyenne. I know they get, you know, upset about this, but it just isn't equitable. We're the folks outside of Cheyenne are here and paying for a hotel. And that's what the per diem is partially for. The reason it is treated as income is because the Attorney General realizes that it's way too generous to be treated as a reimbursement. It doesn't make any sense. I imagine if we bring this back down, that they would say it is not income if it's down to 49. It is then a reimbursement for the food costs and the incidentals. Per diem is three things: lodging, incidentals, and then food costs. I think we bring this down to this level. It is appropriate for the other two, and then I don't think it would be treated as income. That being said, we can have a discussion between second and third reading about how much comes out on the tax and look at what we want to set this at in case it might be still treated as income, which I don't think it would be. But it's certainly not $70. And you know, to say that, well, it's all being treated as income, and that's the difference between 109 and 49. It's certainly not $70 a day of tax that's going to the federal government. So look, I understand the Cheyenne folks aren't going to like this, but it's just good policy. It's not equitable. We can talk more about what the number is between second and third reading, get a little more guidance on what the AG is going to think as to whether it's still income. But I think it's going to be treated as just like our per diem is, as covering their food and their incidentals each day. And so it'll move from income to not being income anymore. So I'd ask for an aye vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members? Chairman Zwanzer, first time on the amendment number 2, Senate File 2.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to clarify, the reason it's treated as income is due to the IRS tax regulations. I don't believe it has anything to do with our Attorney General. It's IRS code based on 50 miles. And so actually the amendment is probably right at 50 miles because that's the tax code on how we get differentiated. And it did make more of a difference in past years when we had two legislators from the city over the hill that technically one was in the 50-mile limit and one was not. And then it was actually weird because there were two different mapping programs. If you took one mapping program, they said they were at 49.9, and the other said they were at 50.1, former distinguished member of this body, right? And so LSO agreed to draw that he would be driving, you know, a different way to the Capitol than a certain other map program for this very reason. But you do have some towns, Pine Bluffs, Chugwater, Laramie, right, where people live in that 50-mile region. I don't think we want them driving back and forth. I know we do have some members who drive 55 miles 2 or 3 times a week. So, and I also know that about at least 7 of you that I just counted stay generally for free with family or friends while you're here. I don't know how to make that fair, but I do know that treating everybody equally is probably the right way to do it in statute.
Any other member, first time? Majority Floor Leader Summers, first time on the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. On and against the amendment. If you'll notice, this goes in and amends the green books for a period of time. And I think if this is good policy, then this should be brought as a bill and we should amend the green books and not do it in the legislative budget.
Thank you. Other members, first time? First time? First time? First time, we're going to second time. Second time. Second time, Representative Gray. Second time. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just wanted to clarify, I appreciate that IRS guidance so we can, you know, understand between second and third reading what that amount on $49 that tax would be per day and consider that as we set this. But I'd ask for an aye vote on this. The tax is certainly not the difference between 109 and 49. The principle here is a pretty simple one. It's that the folks in Cheyenne within a certain mileage, and we can continue to discuss what that is, are not staying in a hotel. And that's one of the 3 things that is in per diem. And so what is that amount on average? but it's certainly not zero. And so, that's the concept here. And this is about, just treating everyone equally. So I'd vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members, second time. We're on second time. Second time to the sponsor, Representative Larson. Dan.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this. And also, I appreciate the input from the representative from Casper. I think the explanation, the biggest explanation is those that live near the city are not having to get a hotel room. And that is part of the per diem. My hotel's $80, let's say. It's going to be right around that. 80 times 30 is $2,400. It's not very much, but is it fair that those that are not having to get the hotel get that amount? $2,400 a month. So 2 months, that's $4,800. So thank you. Vote aye.
Thank you. So there's a request for a roll call. There's a second, Representative Gray. So we thank you. There's a dozen seconds. I think there's a conversation about how many conflicts there now will be. That might be a different issue. Chief Clerk, please call the roll on second reading, Amendment number 2 to Senate File 2.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
No.
Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kinner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western.
Point of order.
What's your point?
Western.
Actually, we don't stop the roll for anything. Continue on, Chief Clerk.
Western. Williams. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Stivar. Henderson. No to conflict. Olson. No to conflict. Further changes? Romero Martinez. No to conflict. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 16 aye, 34 no, 1 excused, 9 conflict.
Members, Senate File 2, Senate File 2, second reading, Amendment number 2 has not been adopted. Senate File 2 has another amendment. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 2. going the other way from the last amendment. I was unaware the other amendment was coming. But members, we had a debate 4 and 5 years ago about increasing our per diem rate. We're one of the few remaining states that do not tie into the federal per diem rate. You all probably know this. Every time we travel and you ask for the government rate, they try to give you the federal rate, which is significantly larger than the state per diem rate, which we haven't increased in over 15 years. And so what this does is starting next January, because I can't start it immediately, it would increase and tie our per diem rate to the per diem rate of the federal government. And there is an issue that I couldn't address in this amendment in the bill about, we have, I think, 20-some boards and commissions that are also tied into our per diem rate. A couple of them are tied into our salary rate as well. If this amendment were to pass, we would certainly talk to the Good Appropriations Committee and then the supplemental budget before January 1st of next year, try to increase that same rate to all of the boards and commissions that are also dependent on the state per diem rate, not the federal per diem rate. It affects us all, and so that's why I thought it was a good time to bring this amendment, at least for our lodging and expenses. We didn't have a salary increase bill this year for the legislature, even though we're upping county level salaries 40 to 50% in some cases. And so I can agree that salary might not be the way to go, but I don't think, as we had several meetings in other places for my redistricting committee this year, or our redistricting committee, several times, the government rate isn't what we reimburse. That 79 is our lodging rate, and there's fewer and fewer motels or any other type of lodging facilities that you can get with on $79 a day in our larger cities in Wyoming. Would ask for your favorable consideration.
Members, first time in the amendment. Majority Floor Leader Summers on the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. On and against the amendment. And while I support increasing, I support increasing per diem rates, but it ought to be in a bill. We ought to debate it. On and against.
Thank you. Any of the members, first time. I have Representative Yin and then Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment. And so, members, you know that I live in Jackson, and you know that lodging is very expensive in Jackson. And frankly, I really like that we have all of our interim committee meetings around the state. What is unfortunate is that, when committees choose where they meet, one of the things that they do take into account when choosing whether or not to go to Jackson is the cost of going to Jackson. I really wish we could have more committee meetings there. I would like to see my constituents be able to come and testify in things that are important for our state. And I think this would help alleviate some of the concern that we just can't have interim meetings all around the state because a specific community, for example, is a little harder to have a committee meeting in. So on and for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chairman Greer, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm against the amendment and absolutely for this concept. And twice I've brought the bill to do this. I voted for the last amendment. I voted no for the same reasons the majority floor leader said. I'm voting no on this amendment for those very same reasons. This issue is an important issue. And so federal per diem, this needs to be debated and it needs to be brought as a bill. And what I hear from my constituents are regarding those boards that are tied to this. Because we have people that serve on boards, much like we do. We are serving. We are not fully compensated for our time. We know that. Those boards are serving anymore. Some of them get $25 or $50 a day for their work. And they'll spend, I know the parole board in particular, and a gentleman on there, 3 days preparing for a day, and they can't get people on those boards. So, and that's just one example, and there's many, many more. And the issue here locally is one to be discussed further. There's some middle ground with that. There are very good points on that amendment. But it needs to be brought forward as a bill, and we need to quit bickering when the bill comes forward. We need to find reasonable solutions going forward. There are 2 different federal per diem rates in this state. That has to be discussed. And so this body actually, I think it was 2 years ago, might have been 3, We passed out something, if you recall, that was relatively reasonable that addressed all those issues. It just didn't make it all the way through. So about 5 years ago, I brought the bill. The bill made it all the way down into the chief executive's desk where there was sort of a poison pill in it, and he just vetoed it. So in any event, I've gone on too long. I'm going to vote no on this. I just wanted you to know why I think we have to look at this. If we want people to continue to come down here and serve, okay, we don't come down here and do this to get rich. We come down here with service in our hearts. But we also have to realize that it is a hardship on our families, and we need to make this as easy, comfortable as possible, and then also think about all those boards too who are donating their service to the state of Wyoming in various ways as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member first time? First time, first time, first time, second time, second time, second time to the sponsor. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do appreciate the good debate that we've had for 5 years, and I apologize to the body. I didn't bring it as a bill, and no one else did. I just assumed with all the other salary increase bills and everything, somebody would. So I don't have a better answer for this session for a 5, if not longer, standing issue than, amending the statutes in this bill. It seems to be the most appropriate place if we're going to do it in this bill. There's not really another bill out there to amend per diem into. So appreciate the conversation. I think the next class of legislators that get elected will live under the same terms we do, and hopefully as a body, someone decides to bring the bill. And I brought a state elected bill 4 years ago and had 200 emails and press things against me. So it's tough for any one member to bring it. Perhaps a committee or management council can look into the issue. But I do think it is difficult to serve when not only, you're basically losing money on lodging for a lot of people, especially for interim meetings around the state as well. So I do think I checked with our good drafters. It is allowable to do it this way. I appreciate that it's not, as easy as it would be in other bills, but would still ask for your consideration to vote aye on the amendment.
Thank you, members. We are voting on second reading amendment number 3, House Senate File 2. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. Senate File 2, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next, Senate File 23.
Senate File 23, sponsored by Labor. Nursing home administrators, an act relating to professions and occupations.
Senate File 23, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next, Senate File 24.
Senate File 24, sponsored by Labor. Pharmacist and pharmacy technician practice, an act relating to professions and occupations.
Senate File 24, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Hearing no, having been read 2 times, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Senate File 29.
Senate File 29, sponsored by Judiciary. Liability for governmental health care providers, amendment, an act relating to the Wyoming Governmental Claims Act.
Senate File 29, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Senate File 31.
Senate File 31, sponsored by Education. Absenteeism and truancy, an act relating to education.
We have an amendment. Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a simple.
Move the amendment.
Oh,
Please move the amendment,
thank you,
Representative.
Mr. Speaker. I move second amendment reading number 1 to Senate File 31 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is a simple amendment that simply adds another penalty option for a judge in the event that a truancy situation needs to be dealt with. Some of the history of the conversation on this and why we took out a fine as a penalty was a discussion of a grandma who is responsible for her grandchildren and may not be able to afford something like this. I actually thought for that same situation it might be important to put it back in, just because community service could potentially be even more difficult in that situation than paying a fine of not more than $250. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussions on the amendment, discussions, Representative Brown on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the discussion. I do think that this is a policy discussion that this body will need to make. And frankly, it's one that the other body down the hall already had a good discussion on as well. And so, and frankly, for that matter, it's been one that the Education Committee and Tribal Relations Committee has had. And what we have found out in all these discussions, specifically surrounding these punitive measures as far as monetary issues, is it's not solving the problem. When we can give another arrow in the quiver to the judicial branch, something other than monetary, it gives them the opportunity and something other than just straight money to try to get their kids to go to school. In some cases, these parents may not have the money. You know, the $5, $10 that we were talking about, they may not be paying it because they don't even have it. Let alone if they do have it, the $5 to $10 is just not going to happen there. The other thing that I'm not certain, I don't have the amendment right in front of me, but I'm not sure if the fine is just a one-time fee, a one-time fine. And so does that occur every single time that this occurs, that the kid becomes truant or absent? Or is this a situation where it's $250 a day? I do think, and there was some good discussion in the Education Committee when this bill came through about what it looked like to have this community service opportunity. I think it's an important discussion for us to think about, and whether or not we want to go down the road of trying to just solve this problem by just tackling it with money. And I'm certainly not on that scope. I do think that the carrot approach with community service was a good approach. So I'd ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Larson, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, I am just so thrilled that this is here before us with the committee that's brought it. Some of you will recall this goes back to bienniums, the first time that your Select Committee on Tribal Relations brought this bill to you, and it's had a few changes in it. But at the end of the day, we're getting there as we try to conform our statutes to comply with absenteeism, with truancy, where we identify what truancy is, where we conform the CHINs and protective service statutes in with what school districts are required to do. On the fine component, just as a precursor to my thoughts, the fine would only be applicable to those students who do not live within the geographic boundaries of the Wind River Reservation. Those kids attending school there would come under the Tribal Law and Order Code, and they have their own set of fines that would be applicable to there. So it doesn't impact that population. However, what we did come to ask is, why would this fine be in 21 under the school section? And if there's neglect or if there's endangerment to the child, let that be handled under Title 14. And if there's a child in need of services or something to that effect. And so the mechanisms there to penalize a parent for causing a child not to go to school, but that comes over in Title 14. And so with that discussion, as we conform those amendments, we concluded that we didn't need it in 21. And so I'd encourage you to not support this amendment, because I think the mechanism's there to really address those kids that are whose parents are endangering and abuse by not making sure they're going to school. That comes in a different section. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any of the members first time? First time on the amendment? First time on the amendment? First time on the amendment? Seeing no one going to the microphone. No one going to the mic. Second time. Second time. Second time. To the sponsor, Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm certainly in support of this bill either way, but this amendment doesn't delete any of the new enforcement mechanisms that we added, which I'm supportive of those being there. It simply adds, it's an or, it simply adds another option that a judge might be able to use in this situation if he or she finds it more appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on second reading, Amendment Number 1, Senate File 31. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. Senate File 31, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next, Senate File 39.
Senate File 39, sponsored by Appropriations, Firemen's Pension Plan Benefits, an act relating to firemen pensions.
Senate File 39, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. All right, members, it looks like we have enough time to get through the consent list, third reading consent list. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the third reading consent list consisting of the following bills: House Bill 44, House Bill 64, House Bill 71, and House Bill 146.
Thank you. Any member would like any of those bills removed from the consent list? Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just numbered an amendment on 146. So if I could remove it, thank you.
Thank you. House Bill 146 is removed from consent. Any other bills removed from consent? Representative Ayer.
I would like 146 removed from this, or
I think
excuse
it
me,
was
147.
Representative Ayer, 147 is not on the consent list.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's on the regular list. 146 was removed from the consent list. 146 was removed. All that remains is 44, 64, 71. Representative Larson Lloyd.
Just, Mr. Speaker, just for your, at least on the yellow sheet we got, 147 is indeed on the consent list.
Okay, so members, the majority floor leader had the motion. The motion included 4 bills. Those 4 bills, now that 146 is removed, are the 3 bills that remain are 44, 64, and 71. Any further removals from the consent list? Consent list. House Bill 44, 64, 71, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bills pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll. Reading Clerk, read the bills in before we call the roll.
House Bill 44, sponsored by Representative Newsom, mobile home and vehicle titles and transfers, an act relating to motor vehicles being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 64, sponsored by Representative Brown, vehicle service contracts, an act relating to the insurance code being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 71, sponsored by Representative Crago, driving while license suspended, enhancement amendment, an act relating to driver's licenses being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Now, following the script, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall bills 44, 64, 71 pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call on the consent list. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Aye.
Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Wharf. excused. We have 59 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 44, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 64, are there any changes? Larson Dan, aye to no. Fortner, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Knapp, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 54 aye, 5 no, 1 excused. And as for House Bill 71, are there any changes? Provenza, aye to no. Yin, aye to no. Andrew, aye to no. LeBeau, aye to no. Burt, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 54 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 44, 64, and 71 have passed the House. So members, our next order of business will be third reading regular, and there are amendments, I believe, on every bill at this point. So in the first, and obviously some of them are fairly substantive bills. So I think, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that's going to take care of our business for this morning. So Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess till 2 p.m.
Committee announcements. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 8, Transportation, will meet in about 15 minutes to take up Senate File 3, Radioactive Materials Transport Fee, and Senate File 18, Engrossed County Road Maintenance Fund Amendments.
Thank you. Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9 will meet tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and we'll hear Senate File 84.
Thank you. Vice Chair Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4 will hear a continuation of Senate File 32 tomorrow upon noon recess in our normal room.
Thank you. Chairman Footner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 6 will meet in 15 minutes. We'll discuss Senate File 7 and Senate File 61.
Chairman Nicholas, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment to hear Senate File 48, 73, 112, and Senate File 39, I believe, for the re-referral.
Further announcements. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet in 11 minutes in our normal place of abode in the Connector Hall to consider Senate File 102, Second Amendment Protection Act, and if time, Senate File 40, Criminal Record Dissemination Military Department, and Senate File 68, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further announcements. Further announcements. So members, recall, in the committees, I'm asking the committee chairman to please pay attention to the time. As at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a floor ceremony on this floor. And I would like five volunteers that are available immediately upon noon recess to meet Anthony Sarah with our LSO staff and bring chairs up for our guests from the second floor on the first garden level west side. Garden level west side to bring chairs up. So seeing no further business for our morning. And members, if you will clean off the top of your desks, just the top shelves of your desks, so there will be cameras and there will be folks attending and be interested in our ceremony at 2 o'clock. So if you'd clean off that top shelf, that'd be appreciated, of especially the papers and stuff. And then five members to assist bringing chairs up. So if with no further business, we are in recess until 2 p.m. sharp. Thank you.